Chapter 10, let's talk about staffing in regards to methods, operations, and regulations. So, healthcare facilities can be 24/7, 365. There are offices and medical parks and medical buildings that are not that such as that, but sometimes they actually are. I once worked in a satellite hospital, um, and we kept patients overnight after they had simple ankle surgeries or even cosmetic surgery at the time. So, yeah, but you have to staff for that. And staffing for a medical office 5 days a week and you have off holidays and weekends is very different than staffing a hospital that requires somebody to be there 24/7 at multiple different levels. Chapter 10 in the book, page 104, we talk about productive and non-productive time, why this is important, the benefit of it, how to budget for something like this, what does it include, how many is available per, especially non-productive time, like PTO or pay time off. That is one of the benefits, if you will, that you want to see an employee handbook is how much time are you giving me off per year for me to take care of myself and be non-productive. So yeah, read about that. FTEs for annualizing. The book does a great job. This chapter, I think, is pretty straightforward, and this chapter also gives you lots of examples and display, not displays, exhibits. This is still talking about FTEs, number of employees required to fill a position. So how do you calculate this and why? Well, of course, why? You want to have coverage. There are standards and there are laws in place that you have to have a certain number of licensed staff per patient, etc. For example, um, in the recovery room that I was referring to, they always had to pay two nurses. You have to have two RNs on shift, even if it's just one patient. And there's a lot of reasons why. Most recently, in the past decade or two, there was a patient who passed away in a recovery room overnight. I think it was up in Ohio, and the it was a nurse and a nursing assistant. The nursing assistant did not let the nurse know that blood pressure had dropped and that her drain was bleeding excessively. So now they require two RNs. That's just one example. Another example would be like in a cancer unit when you're infusing chemotherapy. That person really should not have more than 3 to 4 patients, maybe just two, depending on how sick they are. Because if somebody starts to have an allergic reaction, or what if both patients or all three patients have an allergic reaction, you have one nurse there. Like how that you that's not even you can't even manage that. So that's the type of things to keep in mind in a healthcare facility. Okay, I'm going to keep flipping through these. Tying costs to staffing. So, of course, in healthcare finance, the cost of staff has to be discussed, has to be planned. You have to have a budget, and you don't want to stray too far from that budget. And you want to provide enough staffing, adequate staffing, but not too much. And that's going to look different for different healthcare facilities. And this is how you multiply the factor times the base hourly to compute the cost. Yes, yes. Now, interesting enough, and I don't even know why. I'm just going to say it. Um, I don't know why this came to my mind, but nurses prior to COVID were making uh, 35, $40 an hour. And now post COVID, they're trying to figure out staffing wise, how do we come back and get nurses back into normal full-time employee positions but not pay them $125 an hour like they were doing for the travel nurses and all these contracts and everything during COVID. So it's very interesting right now in healthcare. So what you're learning today, if you graduate this spring or next spring and you enter into a facility and you see that nurses are making 65 or $75 an hour, don't be shocked because our leaders have to figure out a way in a healthcare facility to retain the full-time nurses and but maintain some contracts and travel nurses, but you do not want the entire department to be employed by contract nurses because they're not there that long. You do want to have some veteran nurses, nurses who are hired by the hospital. But anyway, I really think the hourly rate is going to increase for a lot of healthcare people, not just nurses. I speak to nurses because I am one, but even our physical therapists, our nurse practitioners, physician assistants, um, nursing assistants, all the different levels. I really think it's going to increase as we go. Okay, so let me get off that little soapbox. The case of schedule position method, yes, first increase the hourly rate by the percentage, by the percent or factor that represents a non-productive time. So this is how it's still telling you how to compute the costs for staffing. Staffing is expensive in healthcare because it's so important. The role that a physical therapist or pharmacist or what we, what our role is and is keeping human beings alive and safe and healthy. We as a society put a value on that. And right now it's one of the higher paid professions, not high enough in healthcare people's in our eyes right now, because healthcare right now is hard. It's very, very hard compared to what it was 10 years ago. And there's many reasons for that, and I do not have enough time to go over that, and you don't want to hear me ramble. Okay, so regulatory requirements. This starts on page 111 in the chapter. The impact is the staff. It's the impact. The impact is an act that was created by lawmakers. Certificate of need. So this is neat. If you've seen the news in Raleigh lately, Wake Med has acquired and been approved for certificate of needs for a mental hospital in Nightdale, a little satellite hospital in Wendell, and they're rebuilding their current satellite hospital in Garner. So a hospital can't just say, "Oh, I have $1 million. I'm going to buy this piece of land. I'm going to build blah blah blah." A hospital, any kind of healthcare facility, you have to acquire a certificate of need. It's almost like a permit. Like before you even buy the land, you have to see if the state, the regulators will even allow, if the hospital system's even allowed to purchase this. Is there a community need for another hospital, for a healthcare, a mental wellness healthcare facility, etc. But yes, WakeMed got those approvals last year. Exhibit 10.3 is also in the book. Here's an example, like a master staffing plan. Oh, and this does talk about nurses, so I don't feel as bad now for always mentioning nurses. Registered nurses, licensed practical nurses. Side note, a registered nurse is has more roles and duties compared to a licensed practical nurse. I don't know that very many programs even still offer LPN programs because jobs are scarce for the LPNs. A hospital will only hire RNs if they are like a level one trauma center. Most hospitals do not hire LPNs anymore. But anyway, that's, your RN would be your more highly licensed and responsible for much more. They also make much more money. LPNs is underneath the RN, and then the nursing assistant would be underneath both of these and make the least amount of money. But just as important, because I can't take care of 8 to 10 patients by myself and do every single thing. I do have to have a nursing assistant to help me with turning a patient in the bed, changing sheets, grabbing drinks, grabbing blankets, communicating with the family, getting that patient down to radiology or up to the operating room. There's a lot, again, in healthcare. Okay, keep going here. Here's another calculation example. This is the assignment in the back of the chapter. 8 hour, oh, and I see this makes me laugh. Side note with changes, another reason why I don't expect you all to be experts at this and memorize this. There's no reason to, because there are no more 8 hour shifts in the hospital setting. We all work 12-hour shifts because there's not enough people to work. There's not enough staff. There are not enough nurses. There's not enough nursing assistants. So the 8 hour shifts just kind of make me chuckle because 12-hour shifts are mandatory at this point. Okay, and this is just more, here's my beloved 12-hour shift example. I'm just kidding. I would prefer to work 8 hour shifts and not 12s. When I was first hired as a nurse almost 25 years ago, we worked 8 hour shifts, and that was, life was good back then. You made good money, you didn't work too terribly much, and anyway, okay. Scheduling for 12-hour shifts is 36-hour a week. By the way, in healthcare, if you do work 312s, that is full time. So that is a FTE. If you are only working the 8 hour shifts, when they go back, then FTE, well, I guess it would depend on the facility, but most of the time that would be, 5 days a week to get that 40 hours to be full time. And then that's the end. That's the end of this PowerPoint. So staffing, in summary, I thought the chapter had a really good summary. Let me find it and just state it out loud. Staffing operations throughout the U.S. are obviously impacted by regulations and staffing reports, and desired expansion related to operational issues in 36 states are naturally affected by applicable certificate of need requirements. Well, I wonder who, if only 36 states have that, I wonder who doesn't. Anyway, okay, I hope you all have a good week.